Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. We're headed back to the elegant, lace-frilled era of the Victorians, an age of high collars, horse-drawn carriages, and absolutely appalling hygiene. Because while the 19th century may have given us Charles Dickens, steam trains, and top hats, it also gave us body odor so strong it could knock out a footman, teeth that doubled as cautionary tales, and bathtubs that doubled as death traps. So before we dive nose first into the gritty details, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of historical horror disguised as relaxation. And tell me in the comments, where are you tuning in from, and what time is it for you? I always love seeing who's drifting off from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Wrap yourself in a blanket that hopefully isn't made of wool from 1847. And let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey. What Victorian hygiene was really like. A quick warning. This won't be a trip through pristine drawing rooms or candlelit dinners with Queen Victoria. This is a story from the cracks in the floorboards, from the alleyways behind the opera houses, from under the corsets and inside the chamber pots. The real, daily, often disgusting reality of what it meant to live and try to stay clean in a world before hot water heaters, indoor plumbing, or soap that didn't smell like disappointment and lie. You're not an aristocrat tonight. No silk gowns or gilded mirrors. You're not a chimney sweep either, though you might wish you were once we get to the laundry situation. No, you're just you, a time traveler, freshly dropped into the middle of London sometime around 1852, with no modern comforts and no way out. The city is bursting with fog, coal smoke, and things you don't want to ask about. The River Thames is more soup than water, and the perfume in the air, a delicate blend of sweat, soot, and sewage. This is a world where people believed bathing too often was dangerous to your health, where you washed your hands in the same water that 5 other people used, where the doctor didn't clean his tools, because why would he? Germ theory was still a controversial opinion. Victorian hygiene was less about cleanliness and more about not collapsing in the street. It was about public baths that were never cleaned, about corsets soaked with a week's worth of sweat, and toothbrushes that were shared like gossip. And don't even get me started on the public toilets, or rather, the lack of them. But tonight, we're not rushing through it. We're sinking in, slowly, quietly, one grimy, historically accurate detail at a time. Because sometimes, the best way to appreciate our modern lives is to take a gentle, drowsy walk through a past that, quite frankly, smelled like death, mildew, and carbolic soap. So take a deep breath, or maybe don't. Victorian air isn't exactly lavender-scented. Let's begin waking up in the past. You wake to a sensation you don't quite recognize at first. Not because it's unfamiliar, but because you've never woken up this cold and this damp inside a room. It takes you a moment to orient yourself. The ceiling is low, wooden, and stained with decades of candle smoke. A single thin beam of morning light creeps through the cracked shutter slats. Grayish, filtered through a layer of soot clinging to the outside like a second skin. Your mattress is lumpy, not just a little bit lumpy. It's a canvas sack stuffed with horsehair, straw, and possibly regret. The material pokes your back through the nightshirt you definitely don't remember putting on. And yes, there's a damp patch. From condensation. A leaking roof? Something worse? You decide not to investigate. The blanket wrapped around you is heavy. Not for warmth, but because it's wool, dense and barely washed. It smells like old mothballs, smoke, and someone else's history. There are stains on it. They might be ink or mud. They might not. Your head aches slightly, as if the air itself has weight. You inhale through your nose and instantly regret it. The smell is dense, a combination of unwashed bodies, burning coal, stale chamber pot, and the distinct sharpness of carbolic acid, the era's favorite disinfectant, used liberally in a futile attempt to disguise what lurks beneath. You'd almost prefer the chamber pot. Speaking of which, it's in the room. Of course it is. To your left, tucked beside the bedside table, and calling it a table is generous, sits the night soil pot. It's half covered with a piece of linen because modesty must be maintained even when your indoor plumbing consists of a bucket and a prayer. You'd love to wash your hands, but there is no sink. There's a pitcher of water on the stand, cloudy with dust, and a porcelain basin that looks like it's been used more for spitting than for scrubbing. The wallpaper, once likely floral, is peeling at the corners, stained yellow from years of coal smoke and candles. A spider nest clings stubbornly to the far corner of the ceiling, its owner asleep, or not. You don't want to check. The wooden floor beneath the bed creaks with every slight shift of your weight. You suspect there are gaps between the boards. You know there are rats below them. Your bed is pushed up against the wall because the room is barely foot enough to turn around in. There is no closet, just a hook where your day clothes hang. A shirt, trousers, waistcoat, and a jacket that smells like wet tobacco and damp fog. The kind of fabric that never fully dries in London's air. Your boots sit on the floor by the door, their leather cracked. One of them still with a scrap of manure clinging to the sole. No one takes shoes off in the hallway. There is no hallway. Outside the door, the house groans. Old timber and iron nails settling into another gray London morning. You can hear the rest of the house waking up. Footsteps on the stairs. A cough. A hiss of gaslight being struck. Somewhere water being poured into a kettle, the metal clanking as it's placed onto the range. There's a child crying. Not a tantrum, just the slow, tired cry of someone already sick, or cold, or both. Your window, if you can call it that, is a single pane of glass so thin and rippled it distorts the view like a cheap funhouse mirror. The condensation has frozen at the edges. You run your finger along the glass and it squeaks, trailing a line through the fog and grime. Outside, the street is wet, not from rain, but from a mix of fog, coal soot, and the ever-present mist of early industrialized misery. A wagon rattles by. Hooves clop against the cobbles. A man yells something in a thick Cockney accent you can't quite understand. Someone coughs again, deeper this time, from the lungs. It's the kind of cough that has lived in the walls for years. Tuberculosis? Maybe. Doesn't matter. You're breathing the same air. The fireplace in your room is dead. It hasn't seen coal in a week. Your breath fogs in the morning chill, and you pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders. There's a kettle downstairs, yes, but hot water is a luxury. So is heating. The family you're staying with, not yours, of course, rations coal strictly. 1 bucket per day, and only after the sun goes down. It's morning now. You're on your own. There's no alarm clock. Time is marked by the distant factory whistles, already beginning to howl. Somewhere beyond the rooftops, the vast machines of London's industrial heart are starting to grind into motion. The fog is thickening. The air smells like burning oil and old iron. Your teeth feel fuzzy. You reach for a rag and dip it into the cold basin water. No toothpaste, of course. Not even a brush. If you're lucky, there's a stick of bicarbonate nearby. If not, maybe a piece of cloth and a little salt. Mouth hygiene isn't high on the list of priorities in a place where doctors still debate whether bad smells cause disease. You sit on the edge of the bed, feet freezing against the wood. You're not awake, not really. But the day has begun. You're cold. You're unwashed. You're breathing coal smoke, sleeping next to your own waste, and wearing clothes that haven't touched soap in 3 weeks. Welcome to Victorian Hygiene, morning edition. And this is the cleanest you'll feel all day. You shuffle down the narrow staircase, hunched slightly to avoid the low beams that seem deliberately designed to collect foreheads. Each step creaks beneath your feet, announcing your presence like a groaning violin string. The air grows colder as you descend, not warmer. There's a dampness down here, not just from the fog slipping through the doorframe, but from the house itself. It breathes moisture like it's alive, or dying very slowly. The kitchen is already occupied. The matron of the house, a woman whose hands are permanently stained with soot and flour, is boiling water over a stove that's doing its best with the last embers from the night before. The cast iron kettle rattles as it begins to steam, and the whole room smells of scorched metal and yesterday's cabbage. You nod in greeting. She doesn't nod back, not out of rudeness. She's simply too tired. There's no breakfast waiting on a tablecloth. No cereal boxes or fresh coffee. No juice unless you count the cloudy dregs of vinegar water someone poured into a jar to trick the children into thinking it was apple-flavored. The morning meal, such as it is, consists of bread. Stale bread. You're handed a slice that feels like a building material. Crust dense, middle dry, corners suspiciously damp. If you're lucky, there's a pat of dripping to smear across it. Not butter. Butter is for the rich. Dripping's the congealed fat skimmed from last night's boiled meat, chilled and scraped into a greasy slab. It tastes like salt, smoke, and mild panic. Still, it's better than dry crusts and cold air. There's porridge occasionally. Today there is, but it's thin. Oats boiled in water, no milk, no sugar. It tastes like boiled wallpaper glue with the texture of regret. It's hot, though, and that's enough. A tin mug is pushed into your hands. The liquid inside is brown, but not coffee. Chicory root, roasted and ground. A poor man's caffeine substitute, brewed dark enough to give the illusion of strength, but weak enough to still taste like boiled bark. You sip anyway. It's hot. It scalds your tongue, but warms your insides. The children are eating silently, dipping bread into water to soften it. One of them sneezes, then wipes their nose on the sleeve of their only shirt. No one corrects them. There are more pressing matters than etiquette. Now, the business of washing. There's no bathroom, not one with walls or plumbing or even privacy. Hygiene is not a ritual here. It's a strategy, a compromise between what's possible and what's survivable. There's a chipped enamel basin on the sideboard, the same one you saw upstairs. It's been filled with cold water from a bucket. A piece of soap floats inside it. Yellow, hard, carbolic. The smell alone could kill a cockroach. It's made from lye and animal fat, cut with phenol. It burns your hands if you scrub too long, but it's what's available, and better than nothing. You dip a rag in the water and begin the routine. Face, neck, behind the ears. No one undresses to wash fully unless it's Saturday, bath day. Today is not Saturday. You clean what you must and move on. Armpits, hands, hair if you're feeling brave. The water is cold enough to knock the air from your lungs if it touches your chest. You wipe yourself off with a cloth that was once white. No towel, just cotton that's been repurposed and forgotten. There is no deodorant, just talc if you're lucky, or a dab of lavender water, or nothing at all. Smelling like sweat is not considered unusual. It's expected. Everyone smells. What matters is whether you smell worse than others. Teeth? You dip your finger into the salt jar and rub it across your gums. The abrasion scrapes away the night, but leaves your mouth feeling like you licked a rock. Toothbrushes exist, technically, made with bone handles and coarse bristles from pig hair, but most households share one, or none. Your breath is not fresh. No one's is. The air smells like hot iron, stale porridge, and morning mouths. It is what it is. Your fingernails are black at the edges. No one notices. The coal dust lives in the cracks of your skin like a second layer. You could scrub for an hour and still look like you spent the night digging graves. Hair is combed with fingers or shared brushes. Lice are a fact of life. There's no shame in it, only inconvenience. Once a week, kerosene might be applied to the scalp and combed through to suffocate the tiny invaders. Not today. Your underclothes are not fresh. That's not unusual. Most people own only 1 or 2 sets. They are washed on laundry day, boiled in a copper pot with lye soap, then wrung by hand until your knuckles bleed. Laundry is a day's labor, and you only get 1 of those each week. Your outer garments are shaken out, brushed down with a stiff bristle brush, and shrugged on still damp from yesterday's fog. Your socks are wool, itchy, but warm. If you're lucky, they don't have holes. A tin mirror on the wall shows your reflection, pale, tired, smudged at the edges. You smooth your hair with wet fingers. You try not to breathe through your nose. The kitchen smells like boiled fat and wet coal. Someone knocks at the door. A neighbor. He's got coal dust on his sleeves and a half-frozen cabbage under one arm. You nod. He nods. It's morning. That's enough. Outside, the street is awake now. Vendors hawk pies and pickled onions from carts. Horses trot past, their hooves splashing through last night's filth. A man pushes a cart loaded with steaming water barrels, bath water, sold by the gallon. He's shouting prices. No one can afford him. A woman walks by, carrying a pail of laundry on her hip and a child on her back. Both are wrapped in layers of wool and damp muslin. She passes you without a word. You step outside. The air is heavy. The mist sticks to your skin like mold. You can already feel the filth clinging to you again. You washed 20 minutes ago, and somehow you're already dirty. The soot is in your lungs. The grime is in your pores. The stink is in your coat. You haven't even started your workday yet. And somehow, this is hygiene. This is what clean looks like. You dress slowly, not because you're being lazy, but because Victorian clothing isn't just uncomfortable. It's an ordeal, layered, itchy, heavy, and unapologetically impractical. Start with the undergarments. That's right, plural. First, you pull on your chemise or undershirt, depending on your gender and social role. It's thin cotton, yellowing at the seams, and stiff where it's been overboiled in lye soap one too many times. It doesn't feel clean. It feels scoured, like someone tried to punish the fabric into decency. Then comes the corset, assuming you're in a female-presenting body tonight. You lace it yourself, tugging it tight enough to compress your lungs, but not so tight you faint halfway through breakfast. It's not for fashion. It's for structure. It keeps your spine straight and your waist cinched and reminds you every minute that your comfort is a distant third behind modesty and silhouette. For men, it's simpler, but not by much. Stiff-collared shirts, starched cravats or neckties, waistcoats with buttons that strain slightly over the belly, even when you haven't eaten properly in days. Every piece of the outfit was designed to be worn, not enjoyed. Over that, the outer garments. Trousers or skirts made from thick wool, itchy and heavy even when dry. And they're never dry. The London air is soaked with damp. The fog settles into the fibers. You can wring the sleeves out by evening. Then the jacket or bodice, buttoned up to the neck, sleeves to the wrist. No zippers. Those haven't been invented yet. Just dozens of buttons, tiny and stubborn. Or laces that require the flexibility of a contortionist and the patience of a saint. Shoes come last. If you're lucky, you have leather boots, stiff, with soles worn thin from years of walking on cobblestones. They're not shaped for comfort. They're shaped to impress a vague sense of formality on your feet. There is no arch support. There are no insoles, just cold soles, damp socks, and a quiet hope that today you don't step in anything alive. You are now officially dressed, not fashionably, not comfortably, just acceptably. You step back into the house for a moment and notice the temperature again. Colder inside than out. Victorian houses were not built for comfort. They were built to impress from the outside. The interiors, a mix of dark wood, narrow staircases, and questionable insulation. Let's talk about shelter. Talk about your house, or rather, the house you're staying in, is one of thousands lining the tight streets of the city. If you're middle class, it's a terraced house, long, narrow, with a thin front door that opens directly onto the street. No porch, no garden, just pavement and fog. Inside, the hallway is barely wide enough to pass another person. Wallpaper peels slightly at the seams. Once floral, now faded into sepia decay. Coal dust creeps into every crack. The baseboards are warped from damp. The carpet runner is worn through in the middle from decades of boots. There's no central heating. The fireplace is your only source of warmth, and it's stingy. Coal is expensive, and most families ration it. You heat one room at a time, usually the kitchen or the sitting room. The upstairs bedrooms, frozen from November to March. You sleep in your socks, hat, and sometimes your coat. The windows let in more air than light. The glass is thin and rattles in the frame with every passing cart. You stuff rags along the sill to keep the wind out. It doesn't work. Your room is small, not cozy, just cramped. The wallpaper is yellowing. The bed sags. There's one chair, one trunk, and a washstand that wobbles if you lean on it too hard. There's no wardrobe, just a hook behind the door and a drawer with a sticking handle. If you're poorer, and many are, you're not in a terraced house. You're in a tenement, a slum, a brick box with dozens of families packed inside like cargo. Rooms divided by curtains, floors soaked with rising damp. The walls whisper all night. You hear your neighbors cough, argue, make love, and die, all from the comfort of your own straw mattress. There's no insulation, no ceiling fans, no airflow that isn't coming from a crack in the roof. In winter, you freeze. In summer, you suffocate. And the pests, oh, the pests. You've got mice, rats, bed bugs, fleas, lice, cockroaches if you're lucky, beetles if you're not. They live in the walls, the floorboards, and occasionally in your bed. You get used to brushing them off. You stop flinching. Eventually, the house smells, not because it's unclean, but because the 19th century is a place of permanent fermentation. The chimney always smokes. The wallpaper is soaked in generations of pipe smoke and coal soot. The drains burp. The curtain's trap smells like gossip. Every room has a particular flavor: boiled cabbage, paraffin, mildew, and the occasional ghost of chamber pot past. And then there's moisture, always the damp. Victorian homes in Britain were damp by default. The air is never dry. Mold blossoms behind cabinets like malevolent wallpaper. The walls sweat in summer and weep in winter. The smell is omnipresent, the scent of rot in slow motion. Yet somehow, you're expected to look sharp, stand straight, and not complain. The Victorians didn't talk about discomfort. They just called it character building. So you sit, fully dressed in your damp wool, breathing in the sour aroma of coal, cabbage, and mildew. You feel the itch begin, not from any one thing, but from all of it. The clothes, the air, the invisible things crawling in the seams of your blanket. And you're still inside. You haven't even stepped out into the streets yet. The door sticks as you push it open. Swollen wood, rusty hinges, and years of weather have all conspired against you. But eventually, it yields. You step into the street and into the full, unforgiving gray of a Victorian workday. The sky above you is not really a sky. It's a lid. A dome of coal smoke and factory soot so thick it dims the sun by noon. The fog curls around your boots like it's alive, clinging to your coat, to your eyelashes, to your lungs. You inhale, and it's like breathing through wet cloth soaked in chimney ash. You cough, just once, and wipe the back of your hand across your mouth. There's a taste to the air, oily, metallic. It settles on your tongue like you've licked the inside of a smokestack. You're not sick, not yet. That comes later. Today, you work. If you're a man, your options vary, not much in variety, but in suffering. If you're young and strong, you might be digging ditches, carrying bricks, hauling coal, or shoveling slag. You're a laborer, a body rented out by the day, the hour, the minute. If your back gives out or your fingers break, they won't wait for you to heal. They'll find someone else. If you're older, maybe you sweep the streets, a crossing sweeper with a tattered broom, hoping for coins from passing ladies trying to protect their skirts from the muck. Or maybe you clean privies. Maybe you're a tosher, wading waist-deep through London's sewers with a lantern, looking for coins, dropped jewelry, or anything worth selling. That smell, it never leaves your skin. If you're a woman, you might scrub floors in a boarding house, bend over laundry for 12 hours a day, or take in piecework, sewing shirts by candlelight until your vision blurs. The pay is low. The expectations are high. You're to be clean, silent, invisible, a ghost with a mop. Or you might be a match girl. You sit at a long wooden bench beside dozens of others, dipping wooden splints into phosphorus paste. The fumes rot your teeth. Literally. It's called phossy jaw. You'll know it when your gums glow in the dark and your face begins to cave inward. But you smile anyway. Because work is work. If you're a child, and you probably are, you work too. You sweep chimneys. You crawl into machines to clear jammed cogs. You sell flowers in the street. You stand barefoot in the rain with a tray of matches or a bundle of newspapers and hope someone takes pity on you. School is for the rich. You learn to survive by watching, by listening, by obeying fast enough to avoid a slap. Factories loom above you. Brick monsters with smokestacks and iron teeth. The windows are always fogged. The gates are always locked. Inside, it's all steam, sweat, and machinery. If you work in one, your day begins at dawn and ends long after sunset. You punch, pull, stamp, turn, pack, the same motion over and over for hours. You don't rest. You don't sit. You don't daydream. The overseer watches, cane in hand. Slack off, and you'll feel it. Talk, and you're docked pay. Fall behind, and you're replaced. Noise roars constantly, the hiss of steam, the thrum of gears, the endless grind of production. You lose your hearing slowly, 1 decibel at a time. You don't notice until someone speaks behind you and you can't tell if it's real. In the mills, the air is filled with cotton dust. In the match factories, it's phosphorus. In the ironworks, it's sparks and smoke. Everyone coughs. Everyone limps. Everyone's skin is stained by whatever they handle. Ink, dye, coal, ash, blood. It's part of the job. There are no gloves, no masks, no earplugs, no unions. Not yet, anyway. If you lose a finger, you wrap it in rags and keep going. If you collapse, you're dragged to the corner. They'll deal with you at lunch. And the wages? Laughable. Pennies per day. Enough to buy bread. Maybe soap, maybe not. If you don't work in a factory, maybe you work in the street. You might be a mudlark, scouring the banks of the Thames for scrap metal and bones to sell. You might push a wheelbarrow of manure from one end of the city to the other for a halfpenny and a meal. You might pull teeth for a few shillings. No license, no training, just pliers and luck. Some days there's no work. Rain shuts everything down. Or the docks are slow. Or your boss doesn't show. You wait. You hope. You stand in a line of other exhausted faces, watching the foreman walk past and not call your name. Back home, if you can call it that, your family waits. 5, 6, 7 people in a single room, sharing blankets, air, and disease. You bring home your earnings. You hand them over. No questions asked. The money goes to food, coal, candles. There's never enough. You wash when you can. Sometimes that's once a week. Sometimes not even that. You rinse your hands in cold water mixed with lye, scrub your nails with a bone pick, and try not to think about what you touched today. You eat standing up, bread and tea if you're lucky, cabbage and dripping if you're not. Meat is rare. Fruit is a memory. You chew quickly. There's more work tomorrow. You fall into bed, or onto straw, or just against the wall. Your clothes stay on. Your skin is stiff with grime. Your lungs wheeze softly in the dark. You sleep like the dead, until the bells ring again, and the smoke returns, and the cycle begins anew. And through it all, you're told to be grateful. You have work. You have a roof. You're not in the workhouse. Yet. That's something. You don't complain. You don't have time. You have to be up in 5 hours. You start your morning, and often your meals, with a quiet muttering of words not quite memorized. Not because you're devout, necessarily, but because everyone prays. Not praying is suspicious. It's bad luck. It's poor manners. It's something that might get whispered about. And whispers have consequences. Welcome to religion in the Victorian era. Less about comfort, more about control. God is everywhere, not metaphorically, literally. On the lips of your employer, in the sermons shouted from the pulpit, in the eyes of the stranger who watches you cross yourself before biting into your crust of bread. It's not personal, it's not warm, it's omnipresent and vaguely judgmental. The Church of England, or perhaps the local Methodist chapel, depending on your street, is the social spine of your world. If you're middle class, you attend services every Sunday in ironed gloves and a straight face, pretending not to judge the neighbor's hats while secretly hoping your child doesn't fidget too loudly. If you're poor, it's complicated. Church might mean free bread, or charity, or a chance to rest on a bench without being moved along. But it also means lectures, fire, brimstone, a man in black robes telling you that poverty is a trial, a divine lesson, that your suffering is holy, and to question it is to question God. You want to believe, you really do. But it's hard to picture divine mercy when the streets are full of sewage and your hands bleed from scrubbing someone else's chamber pot. Still, you kneel, you bow your head, you try. Because fear is a powerful motivator. You are told constantly that sin is everywhere, not just in murder or theft, but in thoughts, in gestures, in the angle of your glance or the shape of your sigh. Pride is a sin. Sloth is a sin. Lust is a sin. Existing, it seems, is a moral minefield. You walk carefully. Women are expected to be pure, modest, submissive, vessels of virtue, in a world full of temptation. If you're a woman, your job is to uphold moral order or risk condemnation. A loose hemline is suspect. An independent opinion, borderline scandalous. Men, too, are monitored. Averted eyes, bowed heads. A proper gentleman does not drink too much, does not laugh too loudly, and certainly does not flirt with the maid. You go to confession, or sit through sermons, or both. Either way, guilt is constant, a thin thread running through every decision. But organized religion isn't the only belief in your world. There are other forces, older ones, whispered behind hands and passed down by grandmothers whose eyes see more than they should. Superstition fills the cracks where theology stumbles. You don't walk under ladders. You touch iron to ward off evil. You hang a sprig of rowan above the door to keep the devil out, though you'd never admit it publicly. You toss salt over your shoulder when you spill it. You never, ever leave a mirror uncovered during a thunderstorm. Everyone knows that's an invitation. The world is full of signs, omens in teacups, in the flight of birds, in the twitch of a dog's tail. A broken clock means death. A sudden chill. Someone just walked over your future grave. You might wear a charm, a little pouch with a pressed flower, a lock of hair, a coin rubbed smooth by thumb and worry. You tell people it's sentimental. It is. But it's also protection. Curses? They're real or real enough. If your milk spoils or your baby cries too long or your husband strays, well, someone may have looked at you sideways. A midwife, a neighbor, that woman who talks to cats. Witchcraft isn't a burning matter anymore, but suspicion lives on, especially among the poor, especially when explanations are scarce and misfortune comes in threes. And ghosts? Oh, they're everywhere. The Victorians love ghosts. You might find one in a parlor, in a photograph, in the folds of a curtain where no one should be. Seances are fashionable, especially among the upper class. They summon spirits while sipping tea. You don't. You don't want to summon anything. You just want the ones you've already lost to stay quiet. Because death is always near. You live beside it, walk with it, sleep in beds where it once lay. There are entire rituals for mourning. Black veils, hair jewelry, post-mortem portraits. A good death is important. A clean death, even more so. When someone dies, the clock is stopped, the mirrors are covered, the curtains drawn. You wear black for months, or years, or forever. Not doing so is a scandal. If a baby dies, now, and ma do, you christen them quickly. Souls must be saved before they leave the body. There's always someone who knows the prayer, even if the priest is too far to fetch in time. You believe in heaven, or you try to, but mostly you believe in not going to hell, because that, you are told, is the default setting. You must earn escape. Your dreams are haunted by judgment, by angels with swords and eyes like fire, by demons with ink-stained claws and ledgers of your sins, and if you wake screaming, there's no one to comfort you. Just the slow ticking of the clock and the chill on the back of your neck. At night, you whisper a prayer, not out of habit, out of fear. You beg forgiveness. You recite the same lines you've always recited. You ask for mercy, and for protection, and for something, anything, to spare you from the hand of fate that seems so eager to grab people like you. Because in the end, your world isn't ruled by fairness. It's ruled by smoke, silence, and unseen forces, some in heaven, some in the walls, some behind the eyes of the man across the table. And all you can do is bow your head, tighten your laces, and try to walk a line that was drawn centuries ago by men who no longer exist, but who still control everything. You're hungry, not in the modern, mildly peckish sense, but the kind of hunger that vibrates quietly behind your ribs, a dull reminder that porridge water and stale bread don't last long in a working body. It's midday now, and the air outside smells like boiled fat and horses. 100 chimneys belch black smoke into the street. Somewhere down the block, someone is frying something in old grease. You're not sure what it is. It might be meat. It might be optimism. Either way, it smells edible, and that's enough to make your stomach tighten with interest. But let's not romanticize this. A Victorian meal is not a feast. It's a negotiation with reality. If you're poor, and most are, your lunch is likely cold, leftover, and untrustworthy. Maybe a heel of bread and a smear of margarine. Not real butter. Margarine made from beef tallow and dyed yellow to trick your eyes. Maybe a few cold boiled potatoes if you had time to steal some last night before the kids grabbed them. If you're lucky, there's a scrap of cheese, hard, sharp, and wrapped in a bit of newspaper. You peel it off and try not to think about the ink. You eat with your hands. You don't sit. There's nowhere to sit. Just lean against a wall or squat beside the door and chew with purpose. You eat fast because breaks don't last. You eat everything because you don't know when the next meal is coming. If you work in a factory, you might be allowed a tin lunchbox. Inside, maybe some suet pudding, dense, greasy, sweet only if someone remembered to sprinkle sugar. It sits heavy in your gut, which is the point. Energy, not joy. There are no utensils unless you bring your own. And even then, they're shared. Wiped on a sleeve, licked clean, sanitized by Victorian logic, which mostly consists of blind faith and good luck. For drink, there's tea, weak, oversteeped, often reused. If there's no tea, there's water. But water isn't safe. Not here, not in the cities. The pump water is often contaminated. Cholera lives in it. Typhoid swims freely. You drink it anyway, or you don't drink at all. That's why people turn to beer. Beer is safer. It's been boiled, fermented. It doesn't kill you quite as quickly. Even children drink it. Small beer, watered down, barely alcoholic. It keeps them from dying of thirst. That's the bar we're working with. If you're lucky enough to eat in the evening, truly eat. The meal is hot, but not necessarily better. Stew, mostly. Always stew. A pot that sits on the hearth, collecting ingredients like a memory. Potatoes. Onion ends. Bones boiled to soft gray husks. Bits of meat so stringy you could use them to tie parcels. There is no refrigeration. Meat is salted or smoked, or worse. It isn't. You learn to trust your nose. You learn to eat around the green bits. You learn that hunger is a better seasoning than herbs. Sometimes there's pie. Not dessert. Don't be foolish. Savory pie. Pastry filled with whatever's available. Eel, kidney, mutton, Awful. You eat it hot when it's fresh and cold when it's not. The crust is thick, dry, and made to last 3 days. It's more container than food. And now, perhaps, you look for joy. Not comfort, not luxury, just relief. If you're free for an hour, you go to the market, not to shop, just to see people. The market is chaos wrapped in smell. Fish stalls, fruit carts, pickpockets, organ grinders, hawkers selling roasted chestnuts beside ragged men preaching the end of days. Children run between legs, faces streaked with soot. A woman slaps a boy for stealing a plum. Someone's dog has found a pile of discarded meat and is refusing to share it with its owner. You pass a stall selling jellied eels and suddenly remember you aren't hungry anymore. In the evening, if you've still got a few pennies, maybe you head to the public house. The pub. It's loud. It's filthy. It's warm. The floor is sticky. The tables scarred with initials. The ceiling brown from candle smoke. But the ale is strong, and the fire is real. You sit shoulder to shoulder with chimney sweeps, ironmongers, dockers, widows, and men who swear they used to be rich. The barmaid calls you love and throws a rag across the bar. You drink from a chipped mug. You don't ask what's in it. You just sip. And suddenly the ache in your knees fades a little. There might be music, a fiddle in the corner, or a cracked piano that plays only 6 notes, but no one minds. Someone sings a song that doesn't have an ending. Someone else tells a joke that's older than the wallpaper. You laugh. You shouldn't. Your teeth hurt, and the joke wasn't funny. But you do, and that's what passes for entertainment. Other nights there's the music hall, a kind of early variety show. Acrobats, singers, comedians. You sit in the cheap seats, smelling of beer and coal, and watch a man in a shiny hat sing about his mother-in-law. The audience roars. You join in. It's terrible, but it's distraction, and distraction is precious. If you're too poor for that, maybe it's just a walk through the park, if you're allowed there. If you can avoid the constables, you watch the carriages pass by and imagine you're in one, just for a minute, just until the hunger comes back. For children, entertainment is simpler. A ball made from rags, a skipping rope, stones in a circle. They laugh in ways adults have forgotten how to. You envy them, even when their laughter turns into coughing fits. And when all else fails, when the streets are too cold, the stew too thin, the church too judgmental, and the pub too loud, you tell stories, old ones, invented ones, hushed, half-true tales about ghosts, highwaymen, saints, and devils. You wrap your coat tighter around you. You lean close to the candle. You pass a crust of bread around the room. You tell a story to the children sitting on the floor. And for a few minutes, just a few, the house doesn't smell like wet wool and boiled onion. It smells like something older, like imagination, like survival, like hope. You've had a cough for a week now, maybe 2. It started small, a tickle in your throat, easy to ignore. Now it drags through your chest like rusted iron, thick and deep, rattling behind your ribs every time you exhale. But you still go to work. Of course you do. There's no sick leave, no paid time off, just a whispered prayer that whatever's inside your lungs doesn't finish what the coal dust started. It's the Victorian era. You don't expect to live forever. You don't even expect to live long. Illness is everywhere. You can't see germs, not yet. Germ theory is still controversial. Some doctors believe disease comes from miasma, bad air, rotting smells, invisible clouds of death rising from drains and graveyards. They're not completely wrong, but they're not right either. You smell something foul and hold a handkerchief to your face. It's soaked in vinegar. That's supposed to help. It doesn't. Let's start with the basics. You probably have lice. Everyone does. Tiny gray creatures that live in your hair, your sheets, your clothing. You comb them out when you can. You scratch when you can't. Fleas live in your bedding, bed bugs in the mattress, rats in the walls. Disease travels with them, riding silently on fur and teeth. There's no disinfectant, just soap, carbolic acid, and blind hope. And the carbolic acid burns your skin if you're not careful. A cold isn't just a cold, it's a threat. A chest infection can become pneumonia in a week. Pneumonia can become death in 2. Children die often. You don't name a baby right away, not until it survives a few months. Infant mortality is so common, it has its own column in the newspaper. 1 in 5 won't see their 5th birthday. Half of them won't survive the first year. If a child starts coughing, that sharp, high-pitched bark, everyone in the room freezes. Is it croup? Is it whooping cough? Is it something worse? You know the sound of measles, the look of scarlet fever, the smell of infection. And then there's cholera. It comes quickly. You feel fine in the morning. By evening, you're vomiting, cramping, sweating through the sheets. Your skin turns gray. Your eyes sink. You pray for a priest. Then you pray for the pain to stop. It spreads through water. No one wants to admit it. The Thames is a sewer. You drink from it. You die by it. Typhoid, tuberculosis, diphtheria, smallpox, these words aren't medical terms. They're family stories. Your cousin had it, your neighbor, your friend, and now someone in the house is coughing blood into a handkerchief. It's always the lungs, always red on white, always too late. And what does medicine offer? Let's say you go to the doctor. He arrives in a tall hat and a long coat, smelling faintly of whiskey and formaldehyde. His bag is leather, scuffed, and filled with tools that look more like torture devices than healing instruments. There's no anesthesia, not unless you're rich. Maybe a sniff of ether, a swig of gin, a stick to bite. For most, pain is part of the process. He might prescribe opium, laudanum, alcohol mixed with powdered poppy. You drink it in drops. It dulls the pain and softens the screaming. It also ruins your appetite, clouds your brain, and quietly makes you dependent. Or maybe it's bloodletting, still common. A few leeches placed carefully behind your ears, or a blade to the arm. Because illness, they believe, comes from imbalances. Too much blood, too much bile. They drain you, hoping to bring the body back into harmony. Feeling feverish? Must be the devil in your gut. Let's purge it with syrup of ipecac. You vomit until you can't speak. Have a headache? They'll give you mercury. For ulcers, burnt toast and crushed snail shells. You don't trust the doctor. Not really. But you don't have anyone else. Midwives still exist. Herbalists. Old women with bundles of dried leaves and bottles of strange oils. They whisper to the sick, apply poultices, brew teas that smell like grave dirt. Sometimes they help, sometimes not. The hospitals are worse. They reek of bleach and blood. The beds are narrow, the sheets rarely changed. If you lie there too long, the sores on your back become part of the mattress. Surgeons operate with bare hands and unwashed tools. They go from patient to patient with the same apron, stained with yesterday's blood. Amputation is fast, brutal, and very final. No one wants to go to the hospital unless they have no other choice. People die there, not just from disease, from the cure. So you stay home. You cough quietly into the corner. You drink your tea. You whisper prayers you barely remember. And always, always, there's death. It lives in the alleyways, the basements, the top-floor bedrooms where the air is still and the windows don't open. It rides in the horse carts that carry away the bodies, covered in a sheet. 2 pence for the undertaker, 1 for the gravedigger. If you're lucky, someone says your name. Funerals are brief. Mourning is long. Black clothes, black ribbon, black gloves. For months, for years, for life. You wear death. You carry it in your pockets. In the lock of hair braided into jewelry. In the photo of a baby who never opened its eyes. In the shadow in your mother's face when she looks at the empty cradle. People say heaven is waiting, that this world is a trial, that pain means purity, that suffering brings salvation. But that doesn't help when your child is wheezing in your arms and the doctor shakes his head and says nothing. There is no peace in dying. Not here, not now. Just silence, and the hope that the next cough isn't yours. So you take another drop of laudanum. You fold your hands in your lap. You wait. And when the pain comes back, and it always comes back, you close your eyes and pretend it's just the cold. If you're a woman in Victorian England, your day never starts and never ends. It simply continues. There is no moment where your time is your own. No hour carved out for peace. Your role is defined by others. Husband, father, employer, neighbor. And no matter your class, you're a servant to someone. If you're working class, your hands are your resume. Red. Cracked. Permanently smelling of soap that burns and starch that stains. You spend your days boiling laundry, scrubbing stairs, sewing buttons, wiping noses, baking bread, and mending the same shirt for the 5th time. You do it quietly. You do it invisibly. You do it because there is no alternative. Your body belongs to the household, and often so do your opinions. Your feet swell from standing. Your back aches from lifting. No one asks how you're feeling. You don't ask either. It wouldn't matter. Your dreams, if you had them, were postponed indefinitely around the age of 12. If you are middle class, you have a servant to do the heavy lifting. But your cage is simply more decorative. You don't sweep the hearth, but you host tea with the same painted smile every week. You don't launder, but you spend hours embroidering napkins you'll never use. You must be pleasant, presentable, perfect. Your corset is tighter, your schedule more delicate. But the expectations are the same. Be good, be graceful, and above all, be useful. And always, always, you are expected to marry. Marriage is not romance. It's contract. It's security. It's a shift in who owns you, not whether anyone does. You don't marry for love. You marry to survive. You marry a man who can keep the roof over your head, the bread on the table, and maybe, just maybe, won't raise his hand too often. If you're lucky, he's kind. If you're not, he still owns everything you have. Your body, your children, your name, your silence. Motherhood begins early, often painfully, often too soon. There is no birth control, not unless you count whispered folklore and dangerous herbs boiled in desperation. There are no choices, just pregnancies, repeated, relentless. Birth is not a private event. It's a public test of endurance. You scream into a pillow while a neighbor grips your hand and the midwife tells you not to make a fuss. The doctor doesn't arrive unless you're wealthy or dying. You bleed, you sweat, you survive, if you're lucky. If not, the baby survives without you, or no one survives at all. And if the child lives, then the real work begins. You feed them, clothe them, teach them to stay quiet in church and not to touch anything sharp or sick. You watch them breathe at night. You watch them cough and wonder if it's the kind of cough that ends with a funeral. You carry them through winters where the coal runs out. You feed them scraps and go hungry yourself. You trade your locket for their medicine. You bury the ones who don't make it, and somehow find the strength to keep going for the ones who do. Because children in the Victorian era are born into labor. At 5, they sweep floors. At 7, they haul water. At 10, they're down chimneys, inside machines, underfoot and underpaid. School is a luxury. Books are a dream. A full stomach is a miracle. And yet, they laugh, loudly, fiercely, like they haven't noticed the world pressing in. They run barefoot in alleyways. They chase dogs through markets. They play with hoops, with string, with pebbles, with anything that isn't nailed down or too sharp. They fight, they dance, they sing songs that haven't been written yet. They grow fast because they must. By 14, a girl might be married. By 15, a boy might be a father, or a soldier, or dead. Family is everything, and yet never enough. You live with your parents until marriage, then with your husband's family after. Privacy is mythical. You sleep 5 to a bed. You share everything: space, food, illness, secrets. When someone dies, the entire household shifts to fill the silence. There is no such thing as grieving alone. You care for the old as best you can. There are no nursing homes, no pensions, just a rocking chair by the hearth and a child sent to fetch the doctor who may or may not arrive. And through it all, the family endures, because it must. You share warmth when the fire is low. You share bread when the larder is bare. You pass clothes from child to child until they disintegrate. You work. You clean. You hold each other in the dark. There is no room for softness, but there is space for tenderness. Brief, beautiful moments carved out between survival. A lullaby sung by a tired mother who can't read the words. A father coming home from the docks with a bruised apple in his pocket for the youngest. A child brushing her sister's hair with a comb made from tin. A boy carrying coal up 3 flights of stairs, just so the kitchen won't be cold in the morning. Love is not spoken often, but it lives in the labor. And that, in the Victorian home, is the closest thing to comfort. It's afternoon now, and the city is louder than ever. The factory whistles have long stopped screaming, but the people haven't. The streets pulse with the slow boil of exhaustion. Footsteps slap the pavement in tired rhythm. Carts rattle. Voices rise in argument, laughter, threats. Sometimes all 3 in the same breath. You're halfway through the day, but it already feels like night. Work doesn't stop. If anything, it sharpens. The sun, if it's visible through the smoke, sits low and orange on the ski line. There's still coal to move, shirts to finish, potatoes to peel. Someone in your tenement has a job cleaning a bakery, and they've just come home, flour in their eyebrows, blood on their knuckles from a slip with a dull knife. And now comes the second shift, keeping your place in a world that doesn't want you to rise. This is the age of social structure, and you are not at the top. If you're working class, the rules are simple. Speak softly, walk straight, keep your head down. You don't make eye contact with a gentleman unless you're spoken to. You don't linger too long near shops with clean windows. You don't argue. You don't ask questions. You wear your poverty like a uniform, one that marks you as less. But even within your own world, there are conflicts. The woman across the street thinks you're lazy. Her husband works longer hours. The old man 3 doors down spits at the chimney boys for begging near the church. There are fights over coal, over noise, over stolen bread, over nothing. And if you live in the slums, you live shoulder to shoulder with strangers from every corner of the empire. Irish navvies, Welsh miners, Scottish laborers, Jamaican dockhands, Chinese sailors. The melting pot is more of a pressure cooker. Tensions brew easily. A whispered slur, a drunken accusation, a long-held suspicion that someone else is taking work you never had to begin with. And sometimes it boils over. The constable's whistle cuts through the noise like a dagger. You look up. 2 boys are fighting outside the pawn shop. Blood on one of their shirts. A shopkeeper yelling for help. No one moves. Not at first. No one wants to be seen. The police arrive eventually. Tall helmets, wooden batons. No questions. One of the boys is taken. The other runs. Everyone watches. And then no one speaks of it again. Because Victorian justice is not about truth. It's about order. Steal a loaf of bread. That's a month in prison. Skip work without permission. Docked wages. Argue with your overseer. Fired. No recourse, no appeal. Prisons are full. Workhouses fuller. And don't forget the debtors' prisons. Entire buildings filled with people whose only crime was being too poor for bills and too visible for mercy. You might find whole families locked up together, father, mother, child, just until someone else pays the butcher. And if you're a woman, the rules are sharper. Your virtue is currency. Lose it, or appear to lose it, and society turns its back. If you speak too boldly, you're called improper. If you're too quiet, you're hiding something. Unwed and pregnant? The shame is permanent. No support, no second chance. Your only options then, become someone's maid, or someone's cautionary tale, or vanish entirely behind the curtains of a brothel, in a part of town where the gas lamps flicker but never seem to stay lit. The streets after dark are different, especially for women. The laughter is louder, the footsteps faster, the men drunker. And if something happens, if a hand grabs your wrist, or a shadow follows too closely, it's your fault. They'll say your skirt was too short, that you shouldn't have been walking alone, that you were asking for it, but you walk anyway. Because what choice do you have? If you're a child, you see all of this, even if no one thinks you understand it. You watch your parents fight over money. You see the landlord knock and hear the word eviction. You learn which adults are safe and which ones should never be left alone with anyone. You grow up fast. Maybe you steal. Just a little. A piece of fruit. A button. A few coins from a till left unattended. You're caught? That's a beating. A caning. A stint in a reformatory school, where the lessons are taught with fists and starvation. But worse than punishment is being forgotten. Being poor in Victorian society means being invisible. The only time people see you is when they need a villain, a cautionary tale, or a ghost in a Dickens novel. You hear about people disappearing, pressed into service on ships, falsely accused, committed to asylums because they cried too loudly after their baby died. The system does not care if you're good. It cares if you're useful or quiet. But not all conflict comes from the street. Sometimes it's inside your own home. A husband who drinks too much. A mother who never recovered from childbirth. A brother who hits you when he's angry and says it's because he loves you. There is no law to protect you, no hotline, no refuge, only silence and more work. So you keep your mouth shut, you tend to the stew, you fold your father's coat, you kiss your child on the forehead and hope they never have to choose between dinner and dignity. That's the real Victorian struggle. Not just hunger, not just labor, but the constant, low-level war against the weight of your own powerlessness. The sun has vanished, not that you ever truly saw it today. The sky turned from gray to black without ceremony, just a slow thickening of the coal-smoked fog until street lamps flickered awake like tired eyes. The gas hissed into the pipes, and one by one, flames licked to life behind sooty glass. It's night in Victorian London, and night is not a time for rest. It's a time for fear. You're home, if you can call it that. The air is colder now. Your breath curls from your mouth like smoke, even indoors. You wrap your shawl tighter, not because it helps, but because it's something to do with your hands. The hearth glows faintly, the last handful of coal burning low and mean. You won't get more until morning, and even then, just enough for one small fire. Candles are expensive. Gaslight is a privilege, so you sit in the dark or close to it. Shadows dance across the peeling wallpaper. The corners of the room vanish into ink. The floorboards creak even when no one's walking. The pipes groan, ancient and rusted. Mice scurry between the walls. or maybe rats. You tell yourself it's mice, always mice. Outside, the streets shift tone. By day, work. By night, danger. Policemen patrol in pairs. They don't whistle unless something's wrong. And tonight, you've already heard it twice. A scream followed one of them. A cart rushed past, its driver slumped, a woman wailing beside him. You saw something wrapped in blankets. You didn't ask what. You already know. Criminals come out now. The real ones. The desperate ones. And the ones with titles. The back alleys fill with sounds that don't belong to any animal you can name. There are places in the city where women disappear, where men vanish after one too many drinks, where bodies wash up in the Thames with their pockets turned inside out and their shoes still neatly tied. The gas lamps don't reach those places. Nothing does. But fear isn't just in the streets. It's in your room because sleep doesn't come easily here. The beds are too small, the blankets too thin. You sleep in your clothes because it's warmer that way. But the cold still finds you. It seeps through the stone, through the plaster, through the seams of the window you tried to seal with rags. The mattress is straw, or worse, a bare ticking stuffed with old rags and lice. It crunches slightly when you shift. There's no pillow, just folded cloth that smells like old breath and damp wool. You lie next to someone, a sibling, a spouse, a child. Maybe more than one. Entire families sleep in one bed. It's normal, expected. Privacy is a myth. Warmth is the real goal. Still, sleep does not come. Not just because of discomfort, but because of what the night brings. You hear coughing, always coughing. Somewhere upstairs, someone gasps through a wheeze. A child cries once, then goes quiet. You strain your ears. You hope the silence is peaceful, not permanent. You hear footsteps outside your door. Hesitant. Scraping. Then fading. Could be a neighbor, could be something else. The lock on your door is a simple latch. Easy to lift. Easy to forget. You close your eyes and see shapes that aren't there. Feel chills that aren't from the cold. The candle burned out an hour ago, but you swear the shadows are still moving. Death sleeps lightly in this house. Sometimes you feel it near your chest, pressing. Still. Heavy. Like someone sitting gently on your ribs, watching to see if your breathing slows. Superstition says don't look directly at the corners. That's where ghosts live. The ones too polite to show themselves but too angry to leave. You whisper a prayer. Quietly. Not because you believe, not entirely, but because you've seen what happens to people who stop. You've heard stories. The mother who buried 3 children in one winter, then refused to speak. The girl who vanished into the river with rocks in her apron pockets. The old man who walked out into the fog and was never seen again. Only his boots returned, set neatly outside his own door. And always, there's the shadow in the mirror. You don't know whose it is, only that it doesn't belong to you. You covered the mirror once. The room felt better, warmer. But then the landlady shouted, said it made her nervous, said it attracted things. You left it uncovered, and now you sleep with your back to it. If you're lucky, your body gives in eventually. You drift, not into dreams, but into darkness. You don't dream much anymore. Or when you do, they're about food, or warmth, or silence. Sometimes you wake in the middle of the night and wonder if you're still breathing. You listen for your heartbeat, slow and quiet, like it's deciding whether or not to keep going. And always, you wonder, will I wake tomorrow? Because death doesn't make appointments in this world. It arrives unannounced. A cough that turns wet, a fall on icy stairs, a scratch that turns black, a missed meal that becomes starvation. You could go to bed tired and never rise again. People do, and if you die in the night, you hope someone finds you before the rats do, or before the landlord evicts your corpse. That's why you keep the fire going, even when it's only ash. Why you place the baby closest to the heat. Why you sleep lightly, always listening for the creak, the cough, the cry. Because in the Victorian night, nothing is still. Not truly. And even in sleep, the shadow of death lingers, like fog beneath the door, cold and patient, always watching. The last ember in the hearth goes dim. There's no more coal in the scuttle, no more candle left to burn, and no more strength in your arms to reach for either. You lie still as the mattress allows, the scratch of the wool blanket against your chin, the groan of the bed frame beneath your hip, the slow, shallow breath you take just to avoid coughing again. You're not asleep yet, but you're close. The sounds of the city are fading. Fewer carts now, fewer boots. The pubs are quiet. The factory whistles won't scream again until dawn. Outside your window, just glass, warped and dirty, the street is nearly empty. A cat slinks past, its eyes glowing like lanterns. The fog has thickened. You could cut it with a knife and still not see a step ahead. And inside this fragile shelter of soot and brick and worn-out prayers, the night settles in. It's the kind of quiet that doesn't bring peace, just a kind of dull stillness, like the city's holding its breath. Your body aches, every part of it, but it's the normal ache, the Victorian ache, the constant whisper in your muscles that today was long and tomorrow will be longer. Your hands are dry, your lips are chapped. There's grime beneath your fingernails that soap alone can't reach. You smell like damp wool, sweat, ash, and old tea. You haven't felt truly clean in weeks, not just physically, but deep down, where the bone meets the breath. And yet, you survived another day. That counts for something here. You fed yourself, even if it was stew made of scraps and broth that tasted faintly of tin. You bathed, if dipping a rag into cold water counts. You worked until your back bent and your fingers throbbed. You smiled when you didn't feel like smiling. You endured. So much of Victorian life was about just that. Endurance. Getting through the day without falling into the gutter. Getting home without being accused of something you didn't do. Keeping your job. Keeping your child alive. Keeping quiet when someone more powerful stood too close. And always, always, keeping clean. Or at least trying to. Because hygiene wasn't about luxury here. It wasn't a spa day. It wasn't a warm shower before bed, or a fresh towel from the dryer, or scented shampoo in a sleek bottle with flowers on the label. It was survival. A daily act of resistance against the filth that clung to everything. Your clothes, your skin, your lungs. You washed in cold water because you had no choice. You brushed your teeth with salt. You rubbed coal ash on your hands to feel less greasy. You doused your hair in vinegar. You wore perfume to hide the truth, not to feel pretty. And most days, it didn't work. Most days you still stank. Not just from labor, but from the city itself. The open sewers, the factory smog, the smell of rot that never really left the air. Victorian hygiene was not a matter of convenience. It was a fight. And now, finally, that fight is over for tonight, at least. So, your breath is slower. Your body stills. You hear the creak of a neighbor's bed above you, the faint squeak of a rat beneath the floorboards, the soft tick of a clock with hands that never move quite right. And slowly, your mind begins to soften. Thoughts blur at the edges. The images from the day, laundry lines swaying in the mist, cracked boots, wet cobblestones, someone laughing in the dark, fade into fog. You remember faintly that this isn't your real life, that the room you're in now is only borrowed, that your bed is somewhere else, softer, warmer, cleaner. You don't live in 1853. You won't wake to a coal scuttle or a bloodletting or a bucket of gray water waiting to be warmed over an open flame. Your toothbrush is in the bathroom. Your soap doesn't hurt your hands. You don't share your bed with fleas or your walls with mold. You can open a tap and trust what comes out. And that's a quiet kind of miracle. So let the soot fade from your lungs. Let the rough fabric slip from your shoulders. Let the silence wash over the sounds of carts and coughing. Let the candlelight flicker out one final time. Because you've walked through it now. Every foul breath, every splintered floorboard, every soot-drenched inch of what Victorian hygiene was really like. And you made it back. So tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in 1853. Sleep well.